So let's talk about something real, something we don't talk about at dinner parties, something that lives in the quiet corners of relationships. Let's talk about what men actually want in a woman. Not the polished Instagram version, not the highlight reel, but the real, the raw, the woman who shows up. Here's the thing. A man doesn't want a woman who's perfect. He wants a woman who is present. He doesn't want a woman who always agrees. He wants one who thinks. He doesn't need a woman who bends herself into something smaller to keep the peace. He needs one who knows her worth and speaks her truth with courage. I've sat with men who told me the most surprising thing. They said, "We're not afraid of her emotions. We're afraid of feeling like we're never enough for her." Let that sink in. It's not about being loud or being quiet. It's about being authentic, the kind of woman who's willing to say, "This is who I am. This is what I need. And this is how I love." Men want the woman who isn't performing. They want the woman who is home to herself. And when she's home to herself, she becomes a place they can come home to. This isn't about gender roles. This is about human connection, about showing up, about daring greatly, about leading with a soft front and a strong back. You want to know what kind of woman a man really wants? The kind who doesn't flinch from intimacy, the kind who can hold her own, the kind who isn't afraid to say, "I'm still learning, but I'm here." That's the woman. That's the kind of woman men don't forget, because she's not trying to be anyone else. She's too busy becoming herself. We live in a world obsessed with polish. We filter our photos, edit our captions, and curate our lives like we're building a museum exhibit instead of living, breathing, vulnerable human experiences. Somewhere along the way, we started believing that what we needed to bring to the table was perfection, that the more flawless we appear, the more lovable we'll be. And let me tell you right now, perfection is not what builds connection. It's presence. It's presence that opens hearts, softens defenses, and creates space for intimacy to grow. When we show up in our relationships trying to be perfect, the perfect partner, the perfect communicator, the perfect emotional caretaker, what we're actually doing is abandoning ourselves. We're editing the parts we think are too much, hiding the parts we think are not enough, and performing instead of connecting. And you can't connect from a stage. Connection doesn't live in performance. It lives in presence. It lives in the unpolished, unguarded moments where we take off the armor and say, "This is me, not the version I think you want, the real me." Men, good men, don't need us to be perfect. They don't need us to always say the right thing or never feel insecure or always have our act together. What they deeply crave, even if they don't always have the words for it, is presence. That grounded, attuned, emotionally available presence. A woman who can sit across from them, look them in the eyes, and be there. Not distracted, not hiding, not shrinking, just there fully. Presence is powerful because it communicates safety. It says, "I'm not here to fix you. I'm not here to prove anything. I'm just here with you in this." And that kind of presence is a rare gift, especially in a world that rewards constant doing over intentional being. We scroll more than we speak. We react more than we reflect. We keep moving because stillness makes us feel things. And sometimes we're scared of what we'll find when we stop. But presence demands stillness, and stillness demands courage. There's a tenderness in presence that perfection can never offer. Perfection is rigid, sharp-edged, and heavy with expectation. Presence, though, is soft, fluid, and invitational. When a man is with a woman who is present, he doesn't feel judged. He feels seen. And feeling seen is what opens the door to trust. Trust doesn't grow from perfection. It grows from shared vulnerability, from the moments when we sit in silence together without trying to fill it, from the times we admit, I don't have the answers, but I'm not going anywhere. That's presence. That's power. When we chase perfection, we create distance, not intimacy. We create a version of ourselves that's so curated it's unrecognizable, even to us. And then we wonder why we feel disconnected, why our relationships feel hollow, why we feel unseen even when someone is sitting right next to us. It's because we're not really there. We've outsourced our worth to the illusion of flawlessness, when our real power is in being human, messy, honest, fully alive. So let me say this plainly. A man who is grounded, self-aware, and ready for real love is not looking for the woman who has it all together. He's looking for the woman who's all there, present in her joy, present in her grief, present in her awkwardness, her laughter, her confusion, her growth. A woman who doesn't need to be perfect to be worthy of love. A woman who says, I'm here and I'm real and I'm enough even as I evolve. That kind of woman, she's unforgettable. Not because she's flawless, but because she's fully present. We've been conditioned, many of us, to believe that harmony in a relationship means agreeing all the time, that saying yes keeps the peace, that if we disagree, especially with the person we love, it means we're inviting conflict, or even worse, disconnection. But the truth is, relationships built on constant agreement aren't peaceful. They're quiet. And quiet isn't the same as connected. Real connection requires authenticity. It requires us to bring our full selves to the table, even when that means speaking a truth that might disrupt the moment. There is nothing more disorienting than being loved for a version of yourself that you've carefully curated, especially when that version isn't real. When we silence our opinions, when we nod along just to avoid the discomfort of disagreement, we are slowly disappearing. And here's what's wild. Many of us do it with good intentions. We want to be agreeable, easy to be with. We fear being too much. But when we stop being honest about who we are and what we think, we trade authenticity for approval, and the cost of that trade is us. Authenticity doesn't mean being combative. It doesn't mean we fight for the sake of fighting. It means we value truth over tension avoidance. It means we trust the relationship enough to risk being real. When a man is truly ready for intimacy, not just companionship, not just convenience, but soul-level connection, he doesn't want a woman who mirrors him. He wants a woman who reflects her own light. He wants to sit across from someone who can say, I see it differently, not to win, but because truth matters more than comfort. And that kind of authenticity is magnetic, not because it's loud, but because it's honest. When we show up in our fullness, when we speak up instead of shrinking, we're saying, I believe this relationship is strong enough to hold all of me. And that's a sacred offering. That's not defiance. That's courage. Men who are grounded and emotionally mature don't feel threatened by authenticity. They are drawn to it because it signals something rare, integrity. Here's the paradox. So many of us have been told that being ourselves might drive people away. But the opposite is true with the right person. The more honest we are, the more clarity we create. Authenticity is a filter. It invites the right people in and lets the wrong ones walk away. And yes, sometimes that hurts, but it also frees us. When you're authentic, You don't have to manage other people's emotions to keep love. You don't have to tiptoe around the truth. You get to stand in it with grace, with respect, and with a kind of inner peace that can't be faked. There is nothing more intimate than being fully known, not admired, not tolerated, but known. And we can't be known if we're always agreeing just to keep the waters calm. Sometimes intimacy sounds like, I don't feel the same way, but I'm listening. Sometimes it sounds like, that's not okay with me, and I want to talk about it. These are the moments that build trust, not because they're easy, but because they're real. Real love doesn't ask us to disappear. It asks us to show up, even when our truth is inconvenient. So let's stop confusing silence with safety. Let's stop measuring the strength of a relationship by how little we disagree. Let's start asking better questions. Am I showing up as myself? Am I saying what's true for me? Do I feel heard, even when I don't align? Because when the answers are yes, when there's space for authenticity over agreement, we don't just have a relationship, we have a connection. And that's where the magic lives. Not in constant comfort, but in shared courage. Would you like me to continue with the next point? Courageous vulnerability in this same style and depth. Vulnerability is not weakness. Let me say that again, because the world will tell you otherwise. Vulnerability is not weakness. Vulnerability is the single most accurate measure of courage. It's the moment you open your heart knowing it could be broken. It's speaking your truth without a guarantee of how it'll be received. It's showing up without the mask. And it takes more strength than pretending ever will. So many of us were raised to believe that being vulnerable makes us a liability, especially as women. We were told to be strong, but that definition of strength looked more like silence than power. We learned to be self-contained, to smile through the ache, to never let them see us sweat, cry, break, or need. And what did that get us? Disconnection, exhaustion, relationships where we were admired, maybe even desired, but never deeply known. Men don't need us to be invincible. They don't fall in love with our perfection. They fall in love when we let them in, when we allow ourselves to be seen in the tender places, the real, messy, breathing parts of us. And it's terrifying, right? Because vulnerability means risk. It means there are no guarantees. It means we could be hurt. But here's the hard truth. If we want real intimacy, we have to risk being real. We have to lead with our hearts, not just our resumes. When a woman is willing to be vulnerable, she's not just opening herself, she's inviting depth into the relationship. She's saying, I trust you enough to let you see this part of me. That is not weakness. That's bravery. That's generosity. It's an act of emotional leadership. Because what we often forget is that vulnerability doesn't just invite love in. It teaches the other person how to show up in return. We give them permission to be human too. And let's be clear, vulnerability isn't oversharing. It's not bleeding all over someone without boundaries. It's intentional. It's sacred. It's not dumping your story on someone because you need validation. It's saying, this is hard for me to talk about, but it matters. It's being emotionally honest in a way that respects both your experience and the space you're sharing it in. That's what men are drawn to. Not the drama, but the depth. Not the chaos, but the courage to feel out loud. When we hide our vulnerability, we might feel safe in the moment, but we pay for it later. We build walls instead of bridges. We perform instead of connect. We say we're fine when we're crumbling inside, and then we wonder why no one seems to really know us. The truth is, people can't love what they can't see. If we keep hiding the real us, we'll keep wondering why our relationships feel empty. Vulnerability is the bridge between isolation and intimacy, and we have to be willing to cross it. There is something unforgettable about a woman who is willing to feel deeply and love fully, even when it scares her. A woman who says, I don't have all the answers, but I'm here with my heart open. That woman changes the room. She changes the relationship. She changes the narrative. Because she's not asking for a perfect life. She's asking for a real one. And that kind of courage, that kind of vulnerability, that is where love is born. There's a quiet kind of power in a woman who knows her worth. It's not loud, it's not forceful, it doesn't need to convince or compete, it simply is. You can feel it when she walks into a room, that calm confidence that says, I belong here, and I don't have to prove it. That kind of presence is magnetic, not because it demands attention, but because it radiates truth. So many of us were raised to believe that we had to earn our worth, that it came from how we looked, what we achieved, how agreeable we were, or how well we kept everyone around us comfortable. We learned to hustle for approval, shrinking ourselves in some places and stretching ourselves too thin in others. But here's what I've learned in 2 decades of research and thousands of stories. Worthiness is not something we earn, it's something we claim. And when a woman claims it unapologetically, she becomes a force. Men, the ones who are ready to show up, are not attracted to neediness disguised as sweetness or self-abandonment dressed up as devotion. They're drawn to the woman who can hold her own, the woman who knows she is enough, even in the moments when she's still figuring things out. She doesn't chase. She doesn't cling. She chooses her peace. She chooses her voice. She chooses herself first, not as an act of rebellion, but as an act of alignment. Self-worth doesn't mean you never doubt yourself. It means the doubt doesn't drive the car. It means you hear the voice of self-criticism, but you don't let it dictate your decisions. You can feel the ache of insecurity and still stand in your value. Because when you know who you are, and when you know that your worth isn't up for negotiation, you stop trying to be palatable, and you start being powerful. Here's the truth. A woman who's grounded in self-worth creates safety. Not the kind that comes from trying to fix or rescue, but the kind that says, I've got me. And that kind of energy is incredibly attractive. It tells the people around her, including the men who might want to love her, that she is not looking for someone to complete her. She is looking for someone to walk with her. Someone who can meet her, not save her. There's a massive difference. We often talk about confidence like it's about being the loudest one in the room. But real confidence, the kind that comes from self-worth, doesn't need to take up unnecessary space. It doesn't need constant validation. It's the woman who sets boundaries with grace. The woman who can say no without a lengthy explanation. The woman who doesn't settle because she's not afraid to be alone. That kind of self-trust is magnetic. And it makes the right kind of men pause and pay attention. When you're rooted in self-worth, you stop seeing love as something to chase and start seeing it as something to receive. You attract different conversations, different energy. You stop performing and start aligning. You stop asking, am I enough for him? And start asking, is he aligned with who I'm becoming? That shift changes everything. Because when you move from proving your value to living in it, you become the kind of woman who isn't just desired, you become deeply respected. There's a kind of safety that has nothing to do with locked doors or alarm systems. It's the safety of being emotionally held. The safety of knowing that when you speak, you won't be dismissed. That when you falter, you won't be shamed. That when you show up, not as your best self, but as your honest self, you'll still be met with compassion. Emotional safety is the foundation of real intimacy. Without it, we're just pretending, going through the motions, performing connection instead of living it. Many men, and this doesn't get talked about enough, have been taught that their value is tied to their ability to be strong, stoic, and unfazed. They've been taught that emotions are dangerous or worse, unmanly, and so they carry their pain quietly, tucked behind sarcasm, busyness, or withdrawal. But the truth is, most men are desperate for a space where they can finally put the armor down, a space where they can feel safe enough to be vulnerable, without the fear of being made small for it. That kind of space isn't created by perfection. It's created by emotional safety. And here's the thing, emotional safety doesn't mean coddling. It doesn't mean never challenging someone or always agreeing with them. It means creating a relational space where honesty can coexist with kindness, where accountability doesn't come wrapped in blame, where hard truths can be spoken without the threat of rejection. Emotional safety isn't about being nice. It's about being real without being reckless. That's what makes it powerful. A woman who creates emotional safety doesn't have to have all the right words. She doesn't need to be a therapist or a master communicator. What she offers is something simpler and far more rare: presence without judgment. She listens without interrupting. She doesn't try to fix feelings. She doesn't pathologize pain. She just sees the person in front of her. And in that moment, the man who's been carrying the weight of being fine all the time begins to soften. Because being seen without judgment is one of the most healing experiences we can offer each other. Emotional safety is born in the little things. It's how you respond when he says something hard. It's the way you pause instead of reacting. It's the trust that builds when someone shares something shameful, and you don't flinch or pull away, you stay. That kind of steadiness becomes the soil where vulnerability can grow. And from vulnerability comes intimacy. From intimacy comes trust. And from trust comes the kind of relationship that isn't just built on attraction, but on truth. Men often won't say they're looking for emotional safety. They may not even have the language for it, but they'll recognize it when they feel it, because when it's present, something shifts. The shoulders drop, the breath deepens, the performance fades, and suddenly, you're no longer two people trying to impress each other. You're two humans being brave enough to be with each other, not perfectly, but presently. That is the power of emotional safety. It's the difference between being tolerated and being treasured. When a woman embodies this kind of presence, grounded, non-judgmental, emotionally attuned, she becomes unforgettable. Not because she fixes him, not because she sacrifices herself, but because she creates a space where truth feels possible, where healing can happen, where love becomes a place of refuge instead of performance. That kind of love doesn't just feel good, it transforms. There is something deeply anchoring about a woman who belongs to herself first. A woman who doesn't wait for permission to feel whole, who doesn't outsource her peace, her joy, her identity to another person, not even to someone she loves. She doesn't chase validation. She doesn't need to be chosen to feel valuable. She wakes up every morning already knowing she's enough, already knowing she's home. And that kind of presence, it shifts the energy in any room she walks into. We are taught early to look outside of ourselves for belonging. We're told our worth is tied to how others see us, to who chooses us, to whether or not we fit into someone else's idea of enough. But that leaves us constantly measuring, adjusting, contorting. We bend to become lovable, often forgetting to ask, do I love who I'm becoming? A woman who is her own home doesn't bend like that. She expands. She lives in her truth without apology. She is soft in her spirit, but firm in her roots. Being your own home doesn't mean living with your walls up. It means you've done the work to know who you are, what you need, and how to hold space for yourself. So you don't collapse at the first sign of distance or disappointment. It means when a man enters your life, he's not filling a hole. He's meeting you in wholeness. You're not looking to be completed. You're looking to be met. There's a difference. And men who are ready for depth, they feel that difference. This kind of woman doesn't fear solitude. She honors it. She uses it to listen to her inner voice, to tune into her spirit, to tend to the garden within. Her worth isn't shaken by silence or time alone. In fact, it grows there. She's not using relationship as a distraction from herself. She's showing up to love as someone who already knows how to sit with discomfort, how to self-soothe, how to hold her own hand through the mess. That kind of emotional independence is magnetic. It says, I want you, but I don't need you to rescue me. And this doesn't mean she doesn't need love. She does, deeply, but she needs true love, the kind that recognizes her strength without fearing it, that respects her boundaries without resenting them, that knows how to love a woman who has already done the work of loving herself. Because she's not trying to merge her life with someone just to feel safe. She's building a relationship that honors two whole people walking side by side, interdependent, not codependent. When a woman is her own home, she doesn't crumble when someone doesn't see her. She doesn't unravel when she's misunderstood. She doesn't abandon herself just to keep the peace. She knows how to return to herself again and again. That kind of inner steadiness creates freedom. It means she can love fully without losing herself in the process. And that's rare because the world has taught women to disappear in love. But this woman, she stays with herself first. Always. A man doesn't need a woman who disappears into his life. He needs a woman who stands fully in her own and invites him in with grace, not desperation. She isn't performing worthiness. She's living it. And because she's already her own home, her love becomes a sanctuary, not a place of dependency, but of deep, intentional connection. Not a place to hide, but a place to arrive. That kind of woman, she changes everything. Not because she needs to, but because she is. There's something incredibly powerful about a woman who not only inspires the man she loves, but challenges him to be better. Not in a way that diminishes him, not in a way that asks him to prove his worth, but in a way that holds up a mirror and invites him to step into his highest self. This kind of challenge is not about comparison. It's about creating a space where both people can grow, where she sees his potential and doesn't settle for anything less than him becoming all that he can be. To inspire is to light a fire within someone. To challenge is to make sure that fire has enough fuel to burn brightly. And here's what so many of us miss. A woman who challenges a man to rise is not pushing from a place of insecurity or competition. She's not trying to make him better because she needs to feel superior. No, she's challenging him from a place of love, respect, and deep knowing. She believes in him, but she believes in her own worth just as fiercely. She doesn't need him to rise to prove something about her. She challenges him because she knows that when both partners rise together, the love between them becomes unstoppable. This isn't about fixing him or being his therapist. It's about showing up with your own fire burning so brightly that it lights up the path for him. It's about creating an environment where he feels safe enough to fail, to stumble, and to get back up. It's the kind of challenge that says, I see your brilliance, I see your shadow, and I believe you're capable of more. Let's do this together. It's not demanding perfection. It's about encouraging growth. Sometimes, even when that growth comes with discomfort or vulnerability, the power of this kind of challenge lies in the fact that it doesn't ask him to become someone he's not. It asks him to step into the best version of himself. It says, you don't need to change for me. You need to change for you. And that's a profound shift. It's a shift from control to co-creation. It's the difference between making someone feel like they have to conform to an ideal and empowering them to rise toward their own potential. The right woman knows that this kind of challenge creates a relationship where both partners are actively evolving, both individually and together. When a woman challenges a man to rise, she is not doing it from a place of judgment. She's doing it from a place of encouragement. She's not pointing out his flaws to make him feel inadequate. She's holding a mirror that reflects his true potential, his integrity, his resilience, his heart. And she challenges him to rise because she understands the transformative power of shared growth. She knows that a relationship built on mutual respect and encouragement is the only kind that truly thrives. This kind of woman doesn't just sit back and wait for change. She cultivates it with intention and love. What often gets lost in relationships is the idea that growth is a solo pursuit. We are conditioned to think that we are each responsible for our own path. But the truth is, the best relationships are the ones where both people inspire each other, challenge each other, and grow together. This kind of love doesn't shy away from difficult conversations or uncomfortable moments. It leans into them because the promise of the relationship is not just emotional connection, but personal and collective transformation. And that is where true depth comes from. The beauty of a woman who challenges her partner to rise is that she creates space for both of them to become their highest selves. It's a partnership where no one has to shrink to make the other feel secure. It's a love that asks hard questions, takes risks, and embraces imperfection. And it's the kind of love that refuses to settle for mediocrity because it believes in the capacity of both people to evolve and thrive. She doesn't just inspire him, she challenges him to take responsibility for his growth, to rise, not because she expects it, but because he is capable of so much more than he's currently giving. And so, what does it mean when a woman embodies all of this, when she is courageous in her vulnerability, rooted in her self-worth, a creator of emotional safety, a home to herself, and a source of challenge and inspiration for her partner? It means she becomes the kind of woman who not only attracts love, but deserves it. The kind of love that isn't transactional, but transformative. The kind of love where both partners grow, rise, and evolve together. A woman who knows her own value doesn't settle for anything less than deep, authentic connection. She doesn't just inspire, she creates a partnership where both people are called to become the best versions of themselves. And when that happens, the relationship becomes more than just a bond. It becomes a force that can change the trajectory of two lives, a force that impacts the world around them. So ask yourself, what kind of love are you cultivating? Are you showing up as your full, unapologetic self? Are you inspiring and challenging not only yourself, but those you love to rise? Because that is where the magic lies, in the willingness to show up, to challenge, to grow, and to be the love you seek. Let us not settle for anything less than the love that calls us to rise, the love that allows us to be seen, to be vulnerable, to be whole. And when we create that kind of love, we become the kind of woman who doesn't just change her own life, she changes the lives of everyone she touches.